Alright Diablo players, let's go over what are the best mythics in the entire game that you may want to craft. We're going to be looking at a lot of different things here. We're going to be looking at specifically the pit leaderboard, going over the top tier builds in the game across the world. We're going to even be looking at some of the Chinese builds. But basically, at the end of the day, the mythics are essentially the rarest things in the game. And if you need to farm them, I have a video guide that goes over how to farm everything, which I will also link down below because it kind of ties in the video. But what are the best ones and why? So this is going to be updated for specifically Season 6. So for starters, I know most people just kind of want to know, yo Slater, just tell me the best ones, man, don't waste my time. And I got you, because I hate when YouTubers do it. The two top ones that are seeing the most play in the top tier builds are going to be the Shroud of False Death and the Ring of the Starless Skies. Those are the two main ones that most people will want, and those are going to be arguably the best ones. Now, depending on what build you're playing, you may want to consider the following as well. It doesn't just have to be those. You can run multiple, but if you're choosing a helmet, well, you only got one option, right? Because you can't wear two helmets. But it depends on the class that you're playing, and I kind of want to go over that as well because it kind of ties into it. Now, as far as it goes, I want to go ahead and mention some of the other ones, but some people may need to know the effects and explanations on why they're so good. So I'm going to also kind of go over that. So Shroud of False Death just gives you +1 to all passives. That's the main reason why people run this armor over here. And it does give you a bunch of all stats. It's not used for the stealth or anything. However, that can be kind of cool, but what it's mainly used for is specifically the huge amount of +1 to all of the passives that it will generate. So on your skill tree, you get +1 to everything, which is actually very, very strong. Now remember, that's the passives, not the skills, but that's still massive. All of your multipliers, you're tagging every single one of these, and all the defensive ones. Now, a lot of builds will be using that, but it's specifically the Spiritborn that benefits off of the Shroud of False Death the most. Now, as far as Ring of the Starless Skies, which is another S tier one, since this is going to be a tier list, the reason why this one is so dang good, it gives you massive amount of attack speed, critical strike chance, and core skills. Depending on the build, lucky hit may matter, but it also gives you a massive amount of resource cost reduction, and it gives you a massive amount of damage. That's why for the S tier, those are the two main ones. Now, we also want to look at the A tier because these are pretty good as well. The Era of Perdition is a really good helmet that will give you a massive amount of crit, and that is very good. Plus, you get core skills, lucky hit, and then you have up to a 60x multiplier. And most people, let's be honest, they're playing this game solo. However, if you are in a group, you kind of steal this effect from other players, and at the end of the day, you're still benefiting as a group if someone has it. So this item is really good for specifically a lot of builds that need that extra critical strike chance. And the reason why the Spiritborn doesn't need this as well is you have 100% crit with the Erotic Like, and then the Overpower with the Banished Sword's Talisman. But this is still a really, really good item. Perhaps people will start to run this in a lot of different builds once the Spiritborn kind of gets nerfed. Harlequin is specifically really good for the defensive stats. If you're looking for an item that gives you a massive amount of cooldown reduction and armor, there are a lot of builds that are endgame that really benefit off of the Harlequin. Now, the next item, which is also an A tier, is the Tierlist Might. That chest piece is really utilized for specifically that maximum to all resistances plus the resistance to all elements. That's the main reason why you're playing it, plus with the damage reduction. And then you can shoot these barrages, but for the most part, the main thing is this offers incredible survivability, and it's specifically in the resistance departments that, well, you really don't have any competition with any chest piece as far as survivability. There's really nothing that's going to be as good. So if you're really struggling in the tankiness department, Harlequin gives you armor, Tierlist gives you resistances, and then you're going to be pretty much set to go. Harlequin will also, again, gives you cooldown, plus it gives you some damage without the all ranks to all of the skills. Next up, this is a very good defensive item. Same thing kind of with the Grandfather, these go kind of hand in hand, but Grandfather does give you a big amount of crit. But the main reason why you would even consider running Doombringer is because it gives you just crazy amounts of HP. It does give you damage reduction and the special lucky hit chance to give you additional damage reduction, but again, it's mainly for the defensive stats that this will offer. It also has a chance to deal shadow damage, so if there is a build that you can like proc certain things that get a damage type, you can maybe use it for that, but for the most part, that's what it's used for. Now, the Grandfather, massive amount of life, massive amount of all stats. You also get a good percent to just flat damage, and then you also get a massive amount of crit. So just big numbers overall, and for a lot of builds, specifically on the Barbarian, you heavily benefit off of the Grandfather, and it's kind of like the best in slot. But For the Necromancer, there really isn't too much of a drive to actually go for this item, but that is another class that can equip it. But those are still really good, and it's arguably like best in slot for a lot of builds to put these in, but the other ones are just simply more universal. And then we also, over here, you can see there's a big gap. So I didn't put anything in B tier, but I wanted to put Andariel still in the C tier. Now, even though it doesn't really see any play now, I feel like it still has a lot of potential for the future. So if they do any sort of mid-season patch, they really need to buff up this. This was an absolute S tier item before, but since they did the number scrunch, for whatever reason, they decided to absolutely just ruin Andariel. So if you're wondering why is no one playing like Andariel's on Rogue anymore? When it was super popular, it was in every single build. Well, what it does give you is a massive amount of all stats and attack speed. These are two really good stats on an item, but that trigger of the Poison Nova simply doesn't do enough damage anymore. It used to do a lot more damage. They basically destroyed it, and it can still be utilized. I mean, you can still go to World Tier 4 with a lot of these items, but there are simply just way better options when it comes to a lot of people build guides when they want to go ahead and min-max to go high tier pushing. This just fell off the planet. It is nowhere near as good as it used to be, so that's why I'm kind of skipping a tier. It's definitely not that great, but I still think that it has potential. All they need to do is crank up the number, which is something, well, we'll see if they actually do later down the line. Now for the F tier, these are items where like I just don't see any potential for these items unless they get a massive rework, because no one's playing these. Heck, no one really plays Andariel's either, but again, Andariel still has kind of a place in the game in the earlier stages. It does help out, considering, remember, you can equip all of the Mythics at a very earlier stage. I believe it's level 35, so there is kind of some play with at least this one. But as far as the F tier items, these are items I do not recommend. If you get these, salvage them. There's no builds with them that are going to be even remotely to the area that players want. So Melted Heart of Slig. So why is this item so bad? Well, it's got some movement speed, which is okay. It's got some lucky hit, gives you maximum resource, but the only builds that would really benefit off of a bunch of extra maximum resource that would heavily benefit off of it was with something that would use Banished Lord's Talisman. And because you cannot equip 2 necklaces, well, that's not going to be happening. You also get damage reduction while healthy, but for the most part, most people want damage, not damage reduction, but it does give you quite a big amount. Now, originally when this item came out, there was some bugs with it that would give you perma, like, unkillable. So there was huge potential with this item, especially in PvP, where you could play certain classes and just, it was specifically the Barbarian, and you would just be literally immortal, but that no longer works, and there's really no point with this item. Again, the only thing that you would benefit off of this is maybe if you got movement speed in the earlier stages, because again, you can roll this earlier on, but that would just be like a leveling item. I wouldn't really recommend it. Again, it's like in the F tier. No one's really using it. Now, both of the items for the Spiritborn, the brand new ones, they both got nerfed before, like, they even got to see some play. And it's really interesting looking at these, because I get asked all the time, Slaydra, I just dropped the new Mythic for the Spiritborn. What build should I play? And I tell you, go look at my build that has no Mythics, because the Mythic item is simply just not valuable here in the weapon department for the pole arm, at least as of right now. And there's 2 reasons. So the special power that makes this thing cool is you get a bunch of damage over time, and you can also become berserking. And then enemies afflicted by more damage over time than their life are just executed. So it just deletes the enemy if the dot damage doesn't enough damage to eventually, eliminate them. Now, the only time that we saw some really good play was with the Barbarian with the key passive that absolutely got destroyed. If you guys remember on the Barbarian, we for a long time we were playing Gushing Wounds. It was so crazy. You would have like 15,000 or 1,500 like X damage. It was out of control. But they nerfed it like way too hard. So this item just doesn't see play because you don't play Bleed Barb anymore. So for that reason, it's pretty bad. And then also with the Spiritborn, you might be thinking, oh, well, can I use my Spiritborn on Poison build? No, because with the there's 2 different variants of the Poison build for the Spiritborn. Let me go ahead and actually refresh this over here. So with the Spiritborn, there is a thing with, it's called Noxious Resonance. Here it is. So this over here, it makes it so your crit strikes cause the enemies to burst, dealing 100% of the poison damage. So if you want to do some sort of Spiritborn poison build, well, you'd want to run this because you can get a huge multiplier. But let's be honest, most people are just playing like the Eagle build with like the Quill Volley because it's like the strongest build in the game, but you don't really have a huge desire for this. But then on top of that, there's some weird things with Overpower where you actually don't want dot. It's probably bugged right now, but like if you play Stinger, you can actually do that passive that I was just talking about. And then you can also run Banish Swords, and apparently it works. So unless they fix that, I mean, if you can overpower on poison, which is a dot, which you shouldn't really be able to do. I don't know. It's probably got some sort of bugs in it, but nonetheless, it's just not valuable for that reason. And again, you're missing out on Rada Kipilike, so you do significantly less damage. But as far as it goes, this was actually the Barbarian one. Let me go and refresh this. This way, we can still look at all the best stuff with the Barbarian, because I wanted to kind of briefly go over that as it is important for this video. But yeah, that one is not good because, again, they nerfed too many things with it. Now, another thing that isn't very good is Nisikem the Herald. This is the ultimate mega item that everyone originally wanted, but because it has this every 5 seconds, you can do some sort of overpower on the enemy. Well, if you hit him 10 times, it removes the buff. So every 5 seconds, you can get 10 overpowers, or you could just play the Rada Kipilike and get 100% crit, 100% overpower on every single hit. So this item just basically deleted itself before it got a chance to see play. Originally, this item with a GA on skills, and if you masterworked it, you get plus 27 to all skills. Unfortunately, they nerfed this item. I don't know why they did it, because it never came out in a good state anyways. And then with the Spear over here, which is the other mythic that can give you a shrine effect, well, even though they have buffed the Conduit, it's still going to be RNG, and there's just much better options at the end of the day for a two-hander. You're missing out on the chance for your core skills or whatever, Fireball, Firebolt, to cast twice. It's just too big to lose out on. Gives you a massive amount of resistances, but like for Sork and Druid, you really don't need resistances. This item kind of needs a rework, and that's why it's going to be in the F tier. Now, to briefly go over which build uses which ones, because that ties into the importance of the video. For the Spiritborn, it's basically the Shroud of False Death. Again, some of these will be looking at them in other languages, but I can tell you, it's just Shroud of False Death. Now, for the Sorceress, you can run the Air of Perdition as well as the Ring of the Starless Skies. Those are the two good ones. For the Barbarian over here, we can run the Air of Perdition. Again, you get that massive amount of crit, and then the Shroud of False Death, and then also Doombringer, and then also Starless Skies is going to be very good. Now for the Hurricane Druid, well, there's none that you need for that build, but there are lots of different Druid builds that can still benefit. If you want to run Shred Druid, hey, I've seen Shred Druids, and you can definitely run a lot of the ones in the S and A tier. Skip out on these ones though. But anyways, that's going to go ahead and wrap up the video. Those are the ones that you want to go ahead and actually build. And if you want my recommendations, the best ones to craft in the very beginning, they're going to get your build way, way, way stronger. If you are having problems with survivability, definitely do not skip out on Tyraels. Or if you need the armor, honestly, the skulls are a lot easier just to socket in your pieces of gear, whereas Tyraels is going to be a big jump in survivability. So if you need survivability, I would really recommend you guys to craft Tyraels first, because those are that's like one of the best mythics for survivability. But if you're having resource problems, Starless Skies is going to get your build more so up online than Shroud of False Death. While this does give you survivability and damage, if you can't spam your good damage skill, like I don't know what build you're playing, but this will really help out with your resources. And then if you kind of want to move around fast and have a lot of crit earlier on, Air of Perdition is still not bad, but Tyraels technically also gives you movement speed, so consider that as well. So again, I just really recommend you guys to craft the S and A tier. There's not really like any ones that are going to be bad. It's just that depending on the build that you play, you may want to craft others first. But there's my recommendation and the guide for the best mythic in Season 6 to go ahead and craft. And again, I kind of went over the builds, but if you need more in-depth explanation of the best builds, I'll also link down below in the pin for the best build for every single class. Since, you know, kind of looking at the best items, well, what about the best classes? Check the pin down below. But that's gonna wrap things up. If you guys enjoyed the video, drop a like on it. If you're new here, hit subscribe, turn the bell, because hey, we may get a mid-season update, and well, some of these really need some buffs, so hopefully we can see some buffs, and I'll update you guys on that when the time is right. Anyways, take care, and I'll see you on the next video. Peace out.